Hi, welcome to my final presentation on the mentored business experience, soft skills, and indicators to let us know what soft skills we have attained as a result of not only this class, but all classes in general, and how it affects um, the mentor's business that I um, was interviewing with, excuse me, and also from previous experience and things that we can use going forward. So first off, communicating effectively. Obviously, what I'm doing right now hopefully would be communicating effectively um, and getting my point across without being, in my opinion, boring or nonchalant monologue, not using a script type thing. But more importantly, when I was talking to Lori, my mentor, um, and a prime example of the communication process is I had asked her to fill out the final evaluation form and had her, in an email, had requested her to send it to Ku Yang, my instructor, and Lori misinterpreted it and sent it back to me. And in response, she said that she was sorry that she didn't read the whole email properly, and there was a miscommunication on her part. And so we worked through it and we got together. So that's one example that Lori and I had. Another is as an adjunct instructor, I know that texting and emailing versus face-to-face conversations can be misinterpreted. So you may not always be communicating exactly what you want to portray, especially with emails and text messaging. It can come across as being mean, when in fact you're really not. That was not your intention. So people have to be very careful of texting and emailing, and the context of it. Also using proper grammar, spelling, not using the abbreviations and so forth. And furthermore, PowerPoint and presentations and video recording as we're doing now. When we get to act responsibly, so when Lori and I agreed what we would talk about, that we would stay connected, but we'd also be, what she said would be confidential, especially since my husband works there. So it was very important that when we talked about accounting procedures and things of that nature, that was, she knew that she could hold me accountable, and I would be not repeat anything that was not in the realm of my husband's position. Despite knowing Lori and the whole family on a personal level, I still acted as a professional and I respected her time, and really truly appreciated it and learned quite a bit from Lori. With that said, I looked at the heavier times of the month when she was, for lack of better terms, she was not as available because of the accounting process and things that needed to be done on certain dates. So those days I avoided. That was out of respect to her. In addition, I tried to work ahead, so at the last minute we weren't trying to do catch up. Also, as an instructor myself, I always told my students that when they stepped into the classroom, as a sociology instructor, where you teach varying degrees of diverse subjects that can be, and most often are, they can be hard for people to talk about, or they can have hurt feelings. So my advice to all students on the very first day was, it's okay to have your values, morals, and beliefs, and that's good. But realize that we have a diverse crowd and diverse people, and with more transfer students and so on and so forth. When we walk in that door, and that includes myself as well, when we walk in that classroom, we leave our own attitudes and beliefs outside that door and keep your mind open so you can learn more about others and find out why their beliefs are different. So that's very important because, the diversity and the sensitive subjects. Likewise, I also held students accountable for specific timelines for their assignments. And, and along the same lines, I was held accountable to get the grading done in a timely manner. Now, working productively, we've kind of gone, I've brought up my example with my mentor that, the 20th of the month through the 2nd of the month was a difficult time for Lori to fit in meetings. So I rearranged our schedule. So during that time period, I would not bother her. It was a professional courtesy. Also, what's very helpful for me, and I use this frequently, is it's everything that I need to do is put in my calendar on my phone, and I always say if it's not on my phone, it doesn't happen because I have reminders. I have to stay organized. Another example of this was when I worked on the City of Wood River's Fire Department. I was the chairperson for the Halloween parade. So a city Halloween parade is quite the undertaking, and it's fun and it's fascinating. But you start, I started in August, sending out flyers to the previous year's parade participants, and also reaching out to newspapers and updating our websites and getting contact information of that nature. And then I would start lining up as they came in. I would start lining up the parade floats so that they were staggered and there were no two like floats together. And then finally, 2 weeks before, ordering the candy. So that was important. And then working cooperatively. Obviously, I can continue that a little bit further with the fire department and the Halloween parade. I didn't do it myself. I was the chairperson. However, with the help of the firefighters and the volunteers and city officials, we all came together to work as a team to make sure that everybody was safe, that there were proper barricades so that kids didn't run into the street to get candy. They weren't allowed to throw candy. They had to walk to the sidelines to give the candy to the children. Likewise, Lori, she provided some insights for me into why they're so successful at motor service and supply is because they treated everybody with respect and worked as a team, regardless of their title or position. Excuse me. And no one was better than the other person, even management. So that is, extremely important, and it gives the employees a great morale. And by doing that, they also demonstrate integrity. And she taught this, Lori taught this not only from the HR perspective, but she demonstrated it on a daily basis. If there was a problem or an ethical issue, she would handle it in a very timely manner. So she would address the issue before it blew out of proportion. While I was a project manager up at Rib Mountain Concession Stand, I was responsible for training first generation Laotian and Hmong students on their first job. So this was very fascinating. I loved it. There was a lot of diversity in the culture, and I love to learn about the different cultures, which is why I'm a sociologist. But with the customer, the Rib Mountain Concession Stand has a lot of tourism and a lot of tourists from all over the place. Customer interactivity is very high. So it was important that we welcome the customers and make sure that they felt comfortable in the situation. And that meant if they spoke English, then we speak English. Now, if there was somebody that spoke French or Spanish, and somebody knew that language and that made the customer feel more comfortable, then it was acceptable. But it was not acceptable to speak a foreign language in the presence of customers that didn't know what language, especially if they were English, just as a courtesy. And another thing that was one thing that was stuck out from this particular instance was there were I was training 4 workers. One was a young man and 3 girls. At the end of the day, we did closing procedures, and this is back in the 90s, and obviously we have to clean and sweep and get the countertops all dusted down, and I divided up the duties and gave each person a rag or a bucket and a broom, and I gave the young man a broom, and he handed it back to me, and he said, "I won't do it, it's women's work." And I said, "Well, here in America, this is everybody's work, and you need to do that, and this is what we need to do." And he refused to do it. And in the end, unfortunately, we had to let him go. It's a cultural difference that he was not accustomed to or willing to change. And thinking critically and creatively, that can encompass what I just spoke with. I know I'm running over on time. I apologize. But a lot of this thinking critically and creatively, as well as developing global awareness, is encompassed in many of the things that I've already spoke about. With Lori at Motor Services, my mentor is going through something I went through back in '89, where we got our first computer system at a law firm, and I had to run accounting books manually. And at the same time, I had a software program and a new computer, so I had to run 2 sets of books for the accounting system to make sure that they were both accurate and there weren't any mistakes. And if there were mistakes, I had to locate them, figure out what was wrong, and then go forward and correct it. So Lori is now going through that with an accounting system, changing from one accounting system to another. So we were able to discuss her questions and issues, and I was able to have a little bit of input as far as QuickBooks and the reports that she'll be able to create now. And once she learns the basics, that she'll really be able to move on. And like I said, we talked about about global awareness. Like I said, I've already mentioned the concession stand and the encouragement to engage. Likewise, Lori said, although they're not really a global company, they do have an impact on the global economy because they have a diverse customer base. Some things that I know from just being a sociology instructor and learning, I love to learn different things from different cultures, is in Japan, one business transaction is, if you have a business transaction while you're in Japan, and if you actually count the change in front of the person that you are purchasing an item from, that is considered disrespect because you don't trust them. So the key to that is don't do that. That it will be very disrespectful. Another example I had was when we went to Mexico, again in the early 90s, and the U.S. dollar was a little less stronger than the Canadian dollar, and it's customary for the tourists, to actually barter with the street vendors on the price. And at one point, several street vendors said, "What, are you from Canada?" And at first I didn't get it, and then my sister said to me, "Well, because Canadian dollar is worth less than the American dollar, they think you're from Canada because you're being cheap." So that was an interesting experience. But in any career, we're going to have to utilize all of these skill sets. Some skill sets you'll have to gradually build upon and learn from, and then they'll become more natural. Um, and if, in addition, we're all going to, one thing I want to always mention is everybody makes mistakes. I don't care who you are, if you're the CEO or if you're the janitor. We all make mistakes. We're human. And as my former employer said to me, Fire Chief Brendan McKee, he said, you know what? If you don't make mistakes, you're not working. So it's important that you keep that in mind and you don't judge people upon that. There were a few other things I want to mention. Again, I know I'm running long on time, but some of the cultural differences in business, international business, can pertain to personal space. Americans, for instance, here we like to keep an arm's length away from each other. We don't want to be right next to each other and close to close. In other cultures, it's common to talk, 6 inches away from each other, or standing shoulder to shoulder. In Russia, for example, it's common for female colleagues to walk arm in arm while going down the street or down the hallway. In America, that might be misconstrued as a sexual relationship. And let's see. Also, there are so many great examples that it's hard to narrow down some of my favorites. But many Americans greet with a handshake. Many people will do the kiss on the cheek, left cheek, right cheek, left cheek. In South Korea, they want their business partners or business guests to engage in karaoke. They don't care how good you are at it or how bad you are at it. But what's important is that you actually partake in this karaoke, otherwise they find it disrespectful. And in France, it's okay if you don't speak French, but as long as you apologize to your business colleagues that you're dealing with that you don't speak French and apologize for your lack of fluency, they will be more accepting, and it's kind of like a show of good faith that you're trustworthy. And another thing that I found interesting, and this will be my last example, was in Japan. In America, we've kind of gotten away from the business cards. In Japan, it's extremely important and highly regarded that you accept the business card with great respect and you treat it with respect and importance. When you're presented with that card, you're supposed to take it with both hands. When you take it with both hands, thank them while you're doing that. And then you put it away in a safe place. You're not allowed to play with it during the meeting or write on it. That would be a sign of disrespect. So in conclusion, there are so many soft skills that are vital to everyday interaction that we don't even think about. There's a lot that can be said for everything that we learn through school and also through our everyday jobs. So you're never too young to learn, and the older you get, the more you learn. So thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day.